Let me tell you about some fascinating research. So we've talked about the power of priming and how what we are expecting of somebody, how it affects them, the way we think about them. So there's an Israeli researcher, his name is Dov Eden, at the University of Tel Aviv, and he decided, well, we've seen this research, we've seen how children are highly suggestible, people are suggestible. What about the toughest people? Are they resilient to this, or are they also highly suggestible? So they did this research that was absolutely fascinating. What they did was, in the army, as you probably know, the Israeli army is one of the highest training, toughest organizations in the world. And in order to become an officer in the Israeli army, you have to be amazing. So they went to this training program. It was a multi-week training program. And they sat down before it started, and they looked through the roster of all the people that were coming in. And they randomly put them into 3 categories. One category was the average applicants. One was the high-performing applicants. And one was unknown. We're not sure where they fit. Now, this is the Israeli army, of course, so there's no below-average applicants. But these are 3 categories: average, unknown, high-performing. And they went to the trainers and they said to them, here are your recruits. Here are the people coming in for your training. And they all fit into one of these 3 categories. And you need to remember their name and their designation as average, unknown, or high-performing. And then they left. They came back when it was done, and it was fascinating. They looked at the data. On average, the high performers, the folks who were randomly placed into this category, remember, rated about 20% higher in the written test. They even, by the way, rated much higher in their performance. So they had all these physical tests, right? The challenges they have to crawl through, and they did better there as well. Much better than both of the other groups, but particularly better than the average recruits. So they did this whole program, and then they also went and they interviewed all of the recruits, all the people going through this training program, and they had them talk about whether they would like to do this again, indifferent, or no, they would not like to do it again. And they found that almost all of the folks that fit into the above average, the high-performing team, that group, wanted to do it again. They thought it was a very valuable experience. And almost all of the folks that were put into the average group did not like the experience. So this was an interesting piece because it wasn't about their actual competency. It wasn't about how they actually performed under pressure. It was about the expectations of the training officers. Now, when they brought this data to the training officers said, this cannot be true. I know these people are high performers. I saw them. I know these folks are only average. I saw that. Now, I want to ask you a question. What do you think that the training officers did differently? Unconsciously, probably, but what do they do differently for the average performers versus the high performance performers? Now, in my mind, I'm thinking about, they're seeing 2 of them, doing like a commando crawl under barbed wire, and there's bullets going overhead, and both of them stumble. And they look at the one who's supposedly in the high performance group, and they say, come on, I know you can do it. Get through there. But they might look at the other guy who's doing the crawling and say, hey, just whatever. You washed out. Give it up. Who knows? But there was those kind of questions, and those were some of the things that the soldiers were saying, that they felt like they weren't given a chance. But at the high performers often felt like, yeah, I was seen for who I am. They pulled the best out of me. It was fantastic. So here's my question to you. What can you do in your own mind when you go talk to your employees? What can you say to yourself to make sure that you are pulling the best out of them? Now, sometimes people tell me things like, hey, Bob, some of my folks are just dead wood. There's nothing good about them. And yet they were hired, and they're still there. So here's my challenge to you. Think about, for all of your employees, in your own mind, what are their strengths? What do they do that is the best? And particularly, if you want to use this what they call the chameleon effect. Do this right before a meeting. And of course, it's called the chameleon effect because people tend to change the way they act based on our expectations, particularly if we have power over them. So use this to your advantage, because I hate to say this, you are, on purpose or on accident, constantly influencing their performance.